Namaste, beautiful souls. Let's begin our journey with the Minchiate minors. And today we will look at the Ace through 5 of the red suits. And if you are new to tarot, if you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Sadhana. And I think some of these reflections will be really useful, even if you are not working with Minchiate, because one of the things I find is that we don't tend to spend enough time reflecting on the energy of the minors. If you're new to reading Tarot de Marseille, some of this you might also find useful, though in this series, I am bringing in some of the energy of the game of Minchiate, and I will be using that information to help reflect and respond to inquiries when I get to the reading section of this series. One of the things that I have learned about the tarot and learned about reading tarot is that big picture is very important. I never want to get lost in the world of what does the Ace of Cups mean? What does the Ace of Coins mean? No single card means any one thing. Cards respond to questions. Cards respond to inquiries. Cards respond to the surrounding cards. And while it's important to have a good foundation of the basic energy of the individual cards, what's more important is that you understand how they respond to each other. And so when I say these are the red suits, what does that mean? And is that something we even consider when we are looking at tarot readings? Well, red suits refer to the hearts and the diamonds. And in most circumstances, the suit of cups responds to the suit of hearts, and the suit of coins to the suit of diamonds. Now, this is not true in all cases, in all forms of cartomancy, but that is what I'm working with here, and that is some information that seems to be consistent in all of the Minchiate resources that I have picked up. And so if you have never considered the different energy between red suits and black suits, this is something quite profound to sit with. When you are playing a game of cards and you hold all black cards, how does that feel compared to holding all red cards? There really is a different sort of feeling between these two. Now, of course, in the tarot, when we're looking at the red cards, we also seem to use words such as receptive suits, lunar suits, things like that. And that may fit into the tarot of Minchiate, but I'm not quite sure about that yet. And there are other ways we have responded to red suits in their connection to, I'll say, blood, but that also means family, tribe, our ancestry, the deep connections among the people in our lives. And so I find the red suits really can get personal and close up, whereas the black suits tend to respond more to what we do than who we are. And so this is what I mean by big picture reflections. I think in all forms of tarot, when we're looking at aces, there's a common understanding that this is a complete energy. It is a potential energy. There is a sense of gift, a fullness, all kinds of possibilities when aces show up in readings. And what I was saying about these suits being more personal, the Ace of Cups and the Ace of Coins do tend to touch us in more personal ways and affect the people and the relationships that are closest to us. With my yogic background and reflecting on aces, I think about the mantra Pranamida, Pranamidam, and this concept of one not being separable. One is whole. You can neither add to the whole nor take away from the whole. There is a real beauty and a sense of divinity and magic and perfection in the aces. When they show up in a reading, it truly does feel like a blessing of some sort is here. And I always ask, well, how am I going to respond to this? Or what am I going to do with this? What is the best action? And so for that action, I'm likely going to look to the black suits. Another important concept that comes in not only through the game of Minchiate, but this is certainly a reflection I have had in reading more contemporary tarot as well. And that in the game of Minchiate, in the red suits, the aces are the highest card, which means that in a hand, if there were no trumps placed, that an ace would capture a 3, or a 2 would capture a 5. The closer we are to the ace, the higher the value. And I think this says something about these two receptive suits and the importance and the value of the ace and the 2 and the 3. These are really special cards to us that we hold close to our hearts and important to the development and understanding of all of the personal kinds of inquiries that come up in tarot questions. And I think you can take that a step further, being a red suit with the suit of cups, in that the suit of cups often responds to relationship, it responds to emotions and feelings and connections among people. The element of water that tends to be associated with the suit of cups, it's flowy and it moves, and there's something that makes sense about, I want to say, not only blood but fluid in general, that I want to keep in mind when I am looking at readings that include the suit of cups, whereas the suit of coins tends to be more solid and less fluid. Though if we are looking at the suit of coins in terms of its earthy nature, then we need to remember that water is contained within the earth, and without water, the earth becomes parched. And so in every system of tarot, I do reflect on the quality of the elements and what aspect of any given element is contained within another element. I also want to note that the gold that the earth provides is the container for the element of water. And so just like I was saying with other aspects of the tarot, the elements cannot be understood in isolation either. And so with these personal these aces that are close to the heart, there is an optimistic sense when they show up in a reading. Once we move away from the ace, we also can bring in the alignment of the symbols that are on the cards. And you'll see that in both of these receptive, lunar, personal suits, that the twos are in the same position. One is over the other. And there may be subtle nuances between decks. In the deck in the center, and I also note that in the tarot Minchiate al Signo, so perhaps in most of the older decks, there are not faces on the coins. And so that is going to give you a different kind of reading. And you can definitely see here we have feminine and masculine. One deck creator decides to put the feminine energy over the masculine, the opposite in this one here. And so you may read something into that. In both cases, they are looking in different directions. But are we looking at this as a circle or something over? If the ace of the suit is whole and complete, then something must have happened to break it apart, to create the two. The ace has separated into two pieces. The two, rather than being two things, could be viewed as half of an ace of coins. As we increase through the suit, we're looking at a distillation of the energy of the potential of the suit. And I think in most cases, it becomes more difficult to put all of the pieces together as the cards become more crowded. In the ace, the two, the three, the four, there is certainly a significant amount of space on the card. Space to make decisions, space to move, space to shift. The objects appear larger, and all of these things may be taken into consideration in a reading. Twos tend to speak to relationship. Perhaps in the coins, the practical energy of a relationship, the day-to-day navigation of a relationship, whereas the Two of Cups may speak to the movement of energy, the feelings, the flow, the water, the emotions. And then you will notice when we get to the three, the shapes change. In the suit of coins, we have the beginning of a pathway, perhaps suggesting a road through something. And depending on how you lay the cards down in a reading, you may be able to connect the card that is below the three of coins to the card that is above, following along the suggestion of a path. Or if you're bringing in more esoteric connections, as above, so below. Whereas in the suit of cups, this receptive suit is arranged in an upward-facing triangle, an energetic symbol. So not only could we look at the geometric information that the shape of the triangle provides, but the facing of the triangle. This is an active energy. The Three of Cups is about building, growing. Growing what? Growing our connections among each other. There may be two subordinates who support the other. Perhaps one indeed is above the other, but there is this implied energy of connection among the three. Perhaps the two below are responsible for the success of the one above. We also have the energy of animals in many tarot Minchiate to contend with. And depending on your comfort knowledge of symbology with animals, you may choose to ignore or bring in the energy of this. Now, this particular animal here, whatever it is, may be moving toward something. And this could be an indication of what kinds of feelings are growing, where attention should be paid. If you saw this figure as a lion, perhaps lion-hearted qualities. You might be looking to the Leo card that happens to be on the other side of the reading. Or perhaps there are some other heartfelt qualities in surrounding cards that build a story with the energy of the lion. Maybe you don't see it as a lion, and then you're going to be bringing in the energy of whatever animal you see in that card. Again, in the coins, if you do have faces on the coins, a story may begin to unfold now that you have more coins on the table. Who is looking at whom? How does it feel to have all of the masculine energy in a certain part of the reading? Are all of the women looking towards a certain card and all the men looking towards a different card? There's an infinite number of possibilities when you start to pay attention to the little details in the card. And I've been wondering in the Minchiate Restore if I would be able to bring in any meaning to the dots that appear on the minor arcana by counting them, by looking at their organization. And you'll also see that there's a lemniscate in the center of the Three of Cups here. In both of the red suits, the fours are arranged in the same shape, a shape of stability, a square, which is a familiar association with the number 4. With the suit of cups, however, because of the nature of the shape of a cup, again, we have 2/2. And that might be something that is important in your reading. The monkey is looking into a mirror. And so certainly that is a powerful symbol. Any cards with mirrors tend to speak volumes. And I'm thinking of the virtue cards and how this particular creature may speak to one of the virtue cards. And here we have, I don't know, a sense of power over. It looks to me as if the figure on the back of the elephant is about to strike not the elephant, but something to the outside. Fours give us stability, a place to land. They feel grounded and safe. And certainly, knowledge of planets, astrology, astronomy could be brought into these readings as well, because this was a concept that was indeed familiar to common people. People consulted astrologers for all kinds of things. And I wonder too about the number of associations with planets. In my preparation for this Minor Arcana series, I went back to the work of Christine Payne-Taller and reread the introduction to Tarot of the Holy Light. Because in her research, what she found was that in the continental tarots that she had been researching, and by continental she meant decks from European countries, not the Iberian Peninsula and not the UK, but Europe itself. And that these decks that she was studying, there were elements of astronomy and astrology, Renaissance magic, the Kabbalah, Gnosticism, the Faust myth, alchemy, sacred geometry, and all of the ancient priestly arts at the core of Western religions. She included contributions of the Masons, the Rosicrucians, and what she learned was that all roads lead to Rome. So that what is at the heart of all of these Italian decks is something very fundamental to the nature of tarot. And so when you think about these older decks and say to yourself, well, I can't really bring in any Golden Dawn associations because these decks predate the Golden Dawn. Well, remember that those Golden Dawn correspondences came from studies of these older decks. And I laugh when I was studying the history of the Golden Dawn and some of Crowley's work and other related texts. The connections and the lengthy articles on chakra associations. And I just smile because, of course, all of that mysticism is over 5,000 years old. And the the adepts, the astrologers, those that are interested in spiritual work would be familiar with a great number of different forms of mysticism. And when one begins to understand what all roads lead to Rome means at a deeper level, there is this feeling that every form of mysticism, every form of spirituality is all teaching us the same thing. And so I mention this because if you are feeling some connection to Jupiter or other esoteric association with the number 4, and that comes to you in a reading, by all means, bring that in. And then you can see the 5s, some of the 5s on the outside here. What happens in the number 5 is that there is a stone in the pathway. And I love that description. It comes through one of the cartomantic studies that I was doing a couple of years ago, and really looking at the shape of the cards. And one of the ways to interpret this is that the 4, rather than being 4 legs of a table or 4 corners of a room, that this is a pathway and we are moving through 2 by 2 along this path. And when we get to the 5, there is a blockage in the pathway. And that should make sense to most of you that already read the tarot. There's some sort of obstacle in the number 5 that prevents us from moving forward. And then there is yet another layer of energy here that I can't ignore. And that is the correspondence of numbers to elements. And the deeper I go with my reading, I find this to be truly fascinating, that the number 5 has this association with the element of ether. It is the 5th element. And this makes so much sense, not in this deck with the association with the Hierophant, but with the number 5 and its connection to the Hierophant in the Tarot de Marseille and other later tarots. And it therefore follows that fire, water, air, and earth are also associated with a particular number. And I'm not going to debate that at this time, but that is something that you might want to sit with and see how you feel about those numbers, and if you could associate an element with a particular number. Because the order of the major arcana in the Tarot Minchiate is different from the Tarot de Marseille, this might be a bit of a stretch. However, because I have all faith in connections and connections among numbers and see numbers as energy themselves, if I did have one of these minor 5s in a reading, and I had 5 love or 15 house of the devil or 25 Virgo or 35 Gemini, for sure I'm going to have a look at what layer of meaning this particular 5 is going to have with a major arcana 5. And that's really kind of fun with the Tarot Minchiate, because not only do we have numbers through 20, but we also have 30s, giving us more possible associations between minors and majors. And so I hope that these different ways of looking at the minor numbers gives you a feeling of strength and more possibilities, a greater vocabulary when a number of minor arcana show up in your reading, especially when you are challenged with working with pip cards. In the next couple of episodes, I'll continue to look at the suit of cups and the suit of coins. We'll go through the numbers 6 through 10, as well as the court cards. Thanks for being here. Take good care. Namaste.